This is a reading from the book of Azariah by Maria Valtorta. It is the 23rd Sunday after Pentecost. It was written November the 17th, 1946. Azariah says, "The sins of the peoples are such and so numerous that if God's benignity and his divine patience were not infinite, the world would for some time have been destroyed as the horror of the universe, a horror that should be removed. For in the perfect creation, opprobrious things must not exist. But in the world, which now is truly the vestibule of hell and the domain of Satan, there are always just people, rare as stars on a stormy night, as palm trees in the arid vastness of the deserts, and as has already been understood from the episode of Abraham, God is ready to use mercy, even with sinners, and save them from punishment." Genesis chapter 18, verses 16 to 33. "If among them there are just ones who pray, to save them from material and moral misfortunes as long as their day lasts, leaving time until their eventide to return to the Lord. Not to save them beyond life if they have deserved punishment, for on the day of God the intercession of the just is no longer of use to restore salvation to those dead to grace. Justice seeks its course, and even if with wrath and rebelliousness they scream at the eternal judge, 'You hate us and cheat us of our share in goodness,' he will answer them in justice, 'No, I have given you your share. You wanted to enjoy wealth, power, lust, and debauchery, obtained by every means. You have had them. I let you enjoy as you wished. You have chosen. I respect your choice, and leave it to you eternally. Those who have lived chastely, temperately, justly, and mercifully, who have suffered and wept on your account, too, and have loved God, their neighbor, and even you that afflicted them, these shall enter into my kingdom. Go. Did you not perhaps say that it was foolishness to postpone joy for the future, and that it was wise to enjoy the certain present? This is what I grant you. You have enjoyed in the little present, now suffer in the eternal present. The just pray for sinners. Woe if it were not that way. The prayers and the tears of the just are mixed with the daily, perpetual lavacre of the divine blood, and this dew of charity cleanses the world of that excess filth which infinite mercy could not tolerate, so that the world can endure, although the eye of God views it with a severity which impresses us angels. If by chance a single day were to pass without even one work of justice being accomplished throughout the orb, if by chance there came a day in which the just turned into sinners, the light would not again illuminate the earth, because it would no longer exist. Justice, during the night, would erase it from among the works of creation. Let what I am saying give you the measure of how valuable men's justice is in the sight of God. One of the causes of justice is sincere, humble knowledge of oneself and the works of God in you. This is one of the forms of wisdom that is hardest to find even in the best Christians. A mistaken evaluation of the virtues makes people become insincere in order to be humble, and sometimes even hypocrites, without considering that they thereby become ungrateful as well. There are many who, being good and possessing special gifts, and knowing they are good, and have been especially benefited by the Lord, through an unjust humility say that they are perfidious or devoid of those gifts which others know are in them. In these things, too, very great justice, prudence, humility, and sincerity are needed. Prudence in keeping the gift gratuitously received concealed, so that knowledge of it will not degenerate into people's fanaticism, disturbance of the one benefited, wasted time, which could be instead be used worthily in the service of the Lord. Temptation, and sometimes sin through pride. Not to lead oneself into temptation is obligatory. Man, even when favored to a great extent by God, must always remember that he is a man, and therefore not entertain illusions about being perfect, or rashly take for granted that the Lord will make up for any act of imprudence committed out of love for his dear Son. To ask the Father not to lead you into temptation is a good request, but the right and proper way to behave is to take care of one's own, not to place oneself in temptation. The devil is a great seducer, but man often calumniates the devil himself, because he makes the devil the cause of all his falls. But it is frequently man who goes in search of slippery ground, not the devil who pushes him into it. Could someone who went walking on a roof's edge accuse the owner of the house of having made him fall and get hurt? He could not. Likewise, the man who in one sense or another spontaneously and imprudently places himself in danger of sinning cannot accuse either God or the devil on account of his sin. For neither God nor the devil have led him into temptation, but his own will has been the only one to blame, having placed itself in an occasion of sin. This goes for everyone, in particular in the Lord's beloved ones with extraordinary gifts, not to protect the gift received with secrecy, so as to avoid fanaticisms which may prompt self-complacency, and therefore ruinous pride, is to lead oneself into the condition of committing the sin of pride. Imprudent is the instrument of God who does not keep the Lord's gift secret. Imprudent 3 times over is the priest, who, as the director of the instrument, or confessor, or pastor, or diocesan bishop, or one temporarily placed in a position to counsel and direct, like a Lenten preacher or organizer of spiritual exercises or missionary, on coming to know of an extraordinary case, divulges it, or on finding out that the instrument does not know how to behave and risks ruining himself and the gift out of either ignorance or imprudence, does not intervene with holy counsels to help the instrument for his own good and that of the gift of which the instrument is the depository. Prudence, which is always the companion of a silent reserve, not permitting propaganda, and conceals the extraordinary under the ordinary appearances of life, should never degenerate, however, into false humility and deceit. When it is necessary for you, dear extraordinary souls, to speak or respond to someone duty-bound to question you, you must not, out of false modesty, say, "I have nothing, for I am the greatest sinner," when within yourselves you feel that you are indeed little souls, but also that, by the grace of God, you are not sinners to the point of disgusting the Lord. It would be a lie. If you were convinced of being such, saying it would be nothing but a humble confession of your sin and wretchedness, regarded as such by you. But if conscience assures you that your smallness is not sullied with serious sins, you must not lie. And above all, you must not do so with the secret desire to hear yourselves being told, "No, you are holy," to take delight therein. With your spirit humbly kneeling before the tender power of God who loves you, sincerely respond to the one having the right to question you. Yes, the Lord has done these things in me, although I am poor and imperfect. Mary was not proud in singing her psalm. She humbly recognized the great things which God had done for her, so that her praise would rise to heaven, and with hers that of her kinswoman. Luke chapter 1, verse 46 to 55. And with her that of her kinswoman, founder of the family of all the souls that would praise the Lord through Mary, the gentle, holy instrument of the Lord's work and your salvation. Luke chapter 1, verses 40 to 45. Paul is not proud in saying, "Imitate me." He simply tells his faithful to imitate him, for the mercy of God, joined to man's will, has made him, Paul, a perfect image of Christ. First CO would be Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16. Just as elsewhere he had mentioned his past sins, just as elsewhere he had confessed that when already an apostle, the angel of Satan had struck him. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 9. So here he says, "Imitate me," as he sincerely states in another place that he enjoyed the Lord's revelations and was taken up to the third heaven. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7, and 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 2 to 4. To say, "God has loved me in an extraordinary way," is not to sin by pride if you say so, and God sees you with one sentiment and will alone, that of magnifying the Lord for what he has done for you. Did the divine master perhaps not say, "When a lamp is lit, it is not placed under a bushel, but on high, so that it will be seen and give off light"? And is it not further stated, "The just will be like the stars"? So this is in Matthew chapter 5, verse 15, Mark chapter 4, verse 21, Luke chapter 8, verse 16, and Matthew chapter 13, verse 43. God lights them. God lights you. Oh, the man who goes on a solitary road at night, raises his head and sees the stars following their course from east to west, and even if he does not know the name of each individual light, he is able to say to himself, "This is the way to go to the goal," for the stars passing overhead from east to west give him the direction of the cardinal points. So it is with the instruments of God. They must shine. Lofty in their special sphere where God has situated, separated, and secluded them from the rest of the world, with their names and addresses unknown, sometimes they themselves unknown as special instruments for years, even after their death. They must, however, shine. And how? By the sanctity of their lives, by tireless work obedient to God's desires, and by their love, and other virtues which at the right moments magnify the Lord for the great things done in them. But they always illuminate, for the Lord, living in them completely, shines and casts forth his light and his holiness from them, and, like sailors lost in a dark, tumultuous sea, spirits head towards these solitary beacons, battered by the storms of the enemy, and the enemies of God, and of his instruments, but strong, heroic, always ready to receive the light, and beam it upon the shipwrecked, so that they will be saved. Souls seek God. It often seems to you that they do not. You do not know the spiritual sufferings of the souls enclosed in a body and subject to thought which are hostile to God. Those who possess these disheartened souls do not themselves notice the tears of their blinded, chained soul going about in distress in search of the light, from the depths of its jail, sometimes trying to escape and seek God, and drink a sip of heavenly air, and fill its spiritual sight with the heavenly light, and receive mysterious words to bear off with itself in secret, words which seem to have been spoken and received in vain, and which sometimes reappear on one's deathbed, and win the final battle, delivering a spirit to God, words which sometimes halt a descent into horror and crime, words which sometimes pull a spirit out of the abyss, and put it back on the way to God. Many words are not needed, sometimes none, to see one another, a glance. Your eyes gaze in a way that is no longer earthly. You look, but it is not you. Christ looks through you. You see, but you do not see the man in front of you. You see his soul with your soul. It is because of this looking with the soul, after you have filled your gaze with celestial light, that you do not look the way everyone else does. You listen to the stories of others and often remain silent, but while your lips are silent, your soul loves, and by loving, it caresses and comforts the embittered, sick, irate soul speaking to you. You also speak sometimes, and say commonplace words to commonplace listeners, from whom you want to keep your secret hidden. But, like the note of a song which now and then escapes from a closed hall and fills the street with sweetness, and which the poor man gathers in and draws consolation from, now and then a spiritual gem falls from your lips, a spark, escaping from the fire possessing you, and the one speaking with you receives it, and meditates upon it, and his soul awakens, reflects, and sometimes decides. Nothing from the works of love is ever lost. Love is in you, and everything is thus active. Yes, there are many, too many, who live as enemies of the cross of Christ. Their end is perdition, their God is their belly, and they make their glory consist of their shame, and think of nothing but the things of the earth. It is true. But they are often only savage souls, or have been made savage by a combination of circumstances. They do not know. They are not aware. They thus do not love, and do not distinguish. Churches are of no use to them. Priests are of no use to them. What are priests to them? The sacraments are useless for them. What are the sacraments to them? Does the savage perhaps know what the ship is that he sees passing before his coasts, or the airplane streaking across the sky? He thinks they are mysterious, magical, fearful forms capable of harming him, and combats them if he can. Does the cannibal perhaps know what the man is who in the name of the cross and knowledge ventures into his lands to take them of faith, or to study the diseases and treat them? To him, the cannibal, he is the prey that should be killed to be eaten, or at least killed as a malefic wizard. Does the savage, or even the primitive or ignorant man, perhaps know what the serum is that the doctor wants to inject him with to save him from a certain pestilence? To him it is poison, the white man's vengeance upon the inferior races, and among whites in civilized countries it is a means used by those in power to suppress the most wretched. How many doctors have died lynched by the fury of the fear of the savage and ignorant? Do not therefore be amazed. If the spiritual savages dwelling in your midst fear and hate, shun, or rage against what is of the Spirit and the church, and live in their brute ignorance, they are unfortunates. They do not go to the spiritual streams. They see them, for they are conspicuous, and shun them. But who avoids drinking from a fresh jet emerging from a mountainside? It seems so humble, so devoid of all miraculous power. There is no suspicion or precaution against it, and people drink from its freshness, and grace enters this way, unnoticed, where it should have entered in no other manner. Where it would have entered in no other manner. Many who were enemies of the cross and lived for their bellies and the things of the earth stop being through the secret operations of the secret missionaries of the civilized world that you are, instruments of God. Many, too, hate you, those in whom Satan reigns and hates you from them. But disregard this. Do not be afraid of them. Tell yourselves, we are citizens of heaven, from which there comes to us the Christ, who transforms the body of our humiliation into light that will not go out. And be steadfast in your work. Even if you do not find anyone to lend you a hand among the priests of Christ, just as Paul exhorts his faithful companion and his Philippians to do with Syntyche and Evodia, be steadfast, considering that your names are written in the book of life, for you live, work, suffer, and die for the glory of God and the knowledge of the gospel. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.